they do have to have egress windows out of them, which is not a big deal. Could be sliding doors, could be egress windows, either one. So, this was the part that said if there's no bedrooms on the second floor, you still have to have egress windows off of it, or doors, or jump platforms, etc., etc. This was the part that surprised me. Under the note, which by the way is part of the code, under this paragraph, there is no maximum height above grade for an egress window. Similarly, egress windows are not prohibited from discharging to the roof unless, regardless of the slope of the roof. So in the past, if you had an egress window out onto a roof, then you had to look at what was the height above grade of that roof, what was the pitch of the roof. Now you can have your egress windows out onto a roof regardless. You got a 12-12 pitch or a 16-12 pitch, you can have an egress window onto it. Welcome to Wisconsin ski slides. So, see. This is about areaways. That really didn't change. That's why most of that's in black. Unlike the IRC, we are still using 46 inches above grade or to 46 inches above floor. Can I have an egress window more than 46 inches above the basement floor? Absolutely. How high above the floor can I have it?
60, 50.
60? What's the rest of it?
Has to have a permanent step.
Has to have a permanent step, and that then from that permanent step to the sill has to be 46. So that didn't change, but it got clarified, and it also talks about steps being acceptable as well as platforms. So that's the same old drawing that's always been in the code. Nothing changed there. Couple of different options. There's more manufacturers now getting into that business. The key thing is that if you have a cover on that areaway, it has to be accessible from the inside without any tools or locks or anything else. So here was the change. An egress window under a deck or porch shall discharge through a clear path at least 36 inches in height and 36 inches in width and no more than 15 feet in length. So if I have a house here and I've got an egress window going out here, and now I have a deck running all the way along that side of the house. What's the biggest dimension that I can have from this point to this point?
15.
15. What if my egress point is over here? Then I suddenly measure on the diagonal. It's just the clarification that 15 feet in a straight line exit, okay? So one of the common ones was this diagram, and it shows it straight across. It does not have to be straight across. You could have a situation where possibly you had, you know, this being compliant and this part of the deck being a lot further out. As long as the closest distance to the outside is less than 15, you're good to go.
So you can go, we get to pick the line then, right? Could be straight sideways,
It's
right?
got to be straight, though. Yeah. You can't be walking around columns and things like that, so you got to have a straight shot. So
Where's it measured from?
From the window, from the
From the
foundation.
out-
From
Outside.
the edge of the window, or
from the outside of the window, not the window itself, but the sill. The foundation line, basically, is where it's measured from. So,
Can I add a little something to that?
yeah.
Yeah. One interpretation that we've added to this is deck could extend beyond the 15 feet with that path, but as long as you had at least a 7-foot clearance, just basing it on, well, we would call for a minimum 7-foot clearance.
But that's not in the code.
No, it's not.
So again, it's that undocumented document called the commentary. So, and believe it or not, there's a lot of building inspectors, especially in this area, that don't believe in the commentary, even though some people do. Okay. So we know we gotta have an egress window. We know we gotta have stairs. This was one that Lenny actually sent me for whether or not that was going to comply. This happened to be a foster home, and they were trying to get second exit. No cigar. Here was another change that happened. In the past, with a sliding glass door, you used to have 30-inch clear on the exit panel. It got reduced to 29. Anybody know why? Wisconsin used to be unique in sliding glass doors. If you measured the standard 6-foot, quote, nominal 6-foot door, the rough opening was 6'4". Most everybody else now, you order a 6-foot sliding glass door, what's the rough opening? 6 feet. So they changed it, saying that they know that all of those that are, quote, nominal 6 feet now do have a 29-inch panel, so that got reduced. It's kind of interesting because the pathway, the minimum clearance pathway in the code still says 30 inches. But when we get to the door, I guess they figure once you make it that far, you're going to be able to get out. Here's the thing about balcony guards. All of this is basically pretty new, pretty much the first time around for the code, so that's why I put it in there. Balcony guard shall terminate no more than 46 inches above the floor level. In the past, we always said the guardrail has to be at least 36 inches, but we never had a height limitation. And what can we have for guards? We've got lots of choices. There's so many more prefab ones on the market, but they felt that it was imperative that we limit the maximum height to 46 inches, based on the same logic that if you can crawl out of an egress window 46 inches above grade, you should be able to get out of this. So lots of variations on that, nothing too earth-shaking. This was a new one, exit the courtyards. Have any of you ever had a customer that you built a home for that had a totally enclosed courtyard? I had never heard of it. Not in a residential building, but if you had a totally enclosed courtyard, you have to have two means of exit out of it. Obviously, you'd have your front, but in this case, you'd have to have an exit here, and you'd also have a secondary exit then out of the house. So the council must have spent 3 hours debating what the requirements would be for an enclosed courtyard, and I'm going like, what's the big deal? I don't know anybody that builds them, you know? You see them built on commercial buildings. What?
I thought the rule just was mainly stating that an exit into a courtyard doesn't count as one of your required
It
exits.
doesn't.
Right,
It doesn't.
but you're saying if you have a courtyard, you'd need, if you were wanting to use it as an exit, is what you're saying.
Right.
You'd have to have this additional that actually got you to the outside.
Yeah.
I see what you mean.
Tub access stairs. This is becoming a bigger and bigger issue. And they clarified it finally. Tub access stairs, unless they are an integral part of an approved plumbing product. So, anybody know what that one is? Never used it? It's a Japanese soaking tub. It's a therapy tub, basically. So that step, if you want to call it a step, or if you want to call it a landing, or if you want to call it a seat, does not have to comply with the maximum rise of 8 and minimum tread of 9, because it was a part of an approved plumbing product. So, unlike that. So, in this case, yeah, there were no steps that were part of that plumbing fixture. So, this was non-compliant because it's not uniform, it's not consistent, and obviously that stair where it tucks under over here at this side doesn't meet the 8 and 9. So, just be careful of that. There seems to be more of these coming around. This is a totally brand new one. In the past, if you had a sliding glass door that was 3 steps or fewer to grade, you did not have to have a landing. But you had to have a landing for swing doors, regardless of whether the swing door swung out or in. And this is the new thing now. So, if we have a swing door, glass, swings into the house, we don't need a landing any longer. So, the only picture I had was one with a landing, but as long as there's no more than 3 steps, and this one needed the landing. Why? 1, 2, 3, 4. Has 4 risers, even though that's divided by a landing. But if you had that set of stairways smack up against the house, and it was only 3 risers, you would not need a landing at a French door any longer. So that's a big change. I don't know if that's come up in anybody's life yet, but or why you would want to do that, but
Why on just French doors and sliding doors? What's the difference in them?
well, the difference was, think about it. It's okay. I'm walking up to the door and I'm standing on the step. If I've got a sliding door, all I got to do is move it to the right or left. With a swing door, I got to push it in or I got to pull it out. And so that's where, when you're standing on that top step that's 9 inches and you go to push the door open, there's a good chance of falling. And that's why it was always prohibited with swing doors, especially if they swung in, because it was a good tripping hazard is what it was. So now they're saying,
What if you have a outswing storm door on it, then you still gotta have the platforming?
right, right. So it's in swing only. But for example, in my house, I have an in-swinging door, but I don't have a storm door. So I don't have a stair there, but I could, and it wouldn't make any difference anymore. So this was always the case where guardrails, handrails, any kind of trim, grills for ductwork, light fixtures, as long as it didn't exceed 4.5 inches into the stairway part. Now they actually put in the code what the minimum is. So if I've got a stairway or a ramp with only 1 handrail, I have to have a clearance of 31.5. You could do the math, 36 less 4.5. Now they put it in the code. Not a big deal, really isn't a change. Individual winder treads may be placed between rectangular treads or at the end of the flight of a rectangular tread, provided the tread depth is at least 9 inches when measured 12 inches out. There was a great deal of debate in the past about a single winder at the base of the tread, at the base of a stairway. And could you have it, couldn't, or not? And about 8 years ago, they introduced a new non-rectangular landing at the top or bottom of the stairs. You could only have that landing, anybody know what I'm talking about? The non-conventional one? So if in fact you had a stairway and you had your regular treads here, and you got to this last one, and now you decided that this one was going to be on an angle, that was known as an irregular landing, and there were specific requirements saying that from the midpoint, the 18-inch point, to the 18-inch point, that dimension had to be 26 inches. To get away from people putting one winder at the base of a stairway, top or bottom. Well, now they found out that realistically, that single winder, if it meets the 9-inch requirements, is no more hazardous than what an irregular shaped landing is. So that got changed. So now that might be code compliant. At the time that this picture was taken, it wasn't. Because when you measured 18 inches and you measured 18 inches, it didn't have the 26. Certainly had the 9, but it didn't have the 26. So, just for the record,